NFL reporter Jordan Schultz reports the Raiders could be buyers at the trade deadline. Devontae Adams didn't seem too happy after last week's game. Hunter Renfrow could be on his way out. And what's going on with Jimmy G's injuries? All those and much more on the Put On Raiders podcast.
Welcome to the Put On Waivers Media Group, home of the Put On Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome, everybody, to the glorious episode of the Put On Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Ryan Holmes, and we are podcasting off the second place shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. PORSBR is my Twitter handle, and Ryan is HRLOLM22. Ryan, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. It is the second place shores, thanks to another Chargers meltdown late in that game.
Classic.
Brandon Staley still has a job. It's not gonna be much longer.
It's like you can't tell your fans you're serious about winning football games if Brandon Staley is your head coach. You're not serious. You're not serious at this point. Let's see here. So a lot to go over with the Raiders here. Let's just start in this first 8-10 minutes here. First, Jimmy G. We don't know much about that injury now. But obviously, how could this affect the Raiders going into the Bear game? Hoyer didn't play. I thought Hoyer was okay in this game. They ran the ball a lot. He got the ball out quickly. He got the ball out to Michael Mayer. Got a play. I think they played crossing a low crosser to Hooper for a big play, and then the Tucker play was huge as well in this ball game.
Yeah, and I know a lot of fans are curious as to why Brian Hoyer's the number 2 when Jimmy G's the number 1 on game days. You kind of saw a reason why. He can come in, run the offense for a quarter, 2 quarters if something happens to your starter, make the right decisions, get into the right protections, run the ball into the right fronts, and just not do anything boneheaded and turn the ball over. And that's what he did. So that's what you're hoping to get out of your second string quarterback. He had a little bit of cushion. He was able to put a couple of field goal drives on the board. Now, ideally, you don't want him to play for 4 quarters or 2 weeks or 3 weeks in a row. But when you need him for a quarter or 2 quarters, you kind of saw it. And then that big throw down the field to Tucker was a big one. Kind of, the safeties were looking for crossers this whole game. They didn't respect the deep ball at all. And I'm not going to say that's because Jimmy G was back there, but let's be real. They did the same thing to Derek Carr last year, where they would drop the safeties down. So this isn't a Jimmy G issue in this specific game looking at the film. But it was good to see a quarterback let it rip for the Raiders and that one-on-one coverage on the outside. And Trey Tucker's fast. Like there was another play where I believe it was Jimmy G threw the go ball up the sideline to the left to Adams.
Yeah,
and you saw Tucker run. He ran right by the corner at the top of the screen. Now, it's easy to sit back on the All-22 and say, hey, should have gone to Tucker. When you have Devontae one-on-one, you give him a shot.
Yeah.
And that's what the quarterback did. But it was good to see Brian Hoyer have a little bit of success. I was concerned, just like every Raiders fan. He was awful in the preseason and the limited time he played, but it was good to see him come in, rally the troops for a couple of drives and get a W.
What do we have here? So we had a Jordan Schultz. I'm not sure how reliable Jordan Schultz is, but Jordan Schultz is that NFL reporter who kind of posted up today who said the Raiders will be buyers during the trade deadline. So that's something to really think about as well. I don't really want to go crazy giving off future assets for this. But I mean, I know if they're thinking about doing that, it's a thing where we have to look at Ziegler and McDaniel saying that we got to win some games, otherwise we're not going to be back possibly.
Yeah, Ziegler and McDaniels are fighting for their jobs. They're not fans like the rest of us. They're not looking ahead to next year's draft and saying this isn't a playoff or Super Bowl team, so let's punt the season. That's not how anyone in that building thinks. And they're looking at it as they're 3-3. They have 2-3 winnable games coming up over the next month. Can they get to 6-7 wins and put themselves in a position after Thanksgiving to play meaningful football games? Now the schedule gets really hard at that point, but they're doing what they think is in the best interest of the team right now. As fans, we step back and look at it through a totally different lens, but To what extent they're buyers, we'll see. Like you said, I don't want to start throwing around first, second round picks unless you're getting a true impact guy that's going to be on the roster in his prime for the next 4 or 5 years. I see a lot of Leonard Williams talk. I'm not really into giving up, a high pick for a guy that one's going to be a free agent after the year, who's making
Yeah.
$18 million. That's on the wrong side of 30 when we get to next year. And I know a lot of people love Leonard Williams. If I'm giving away those kind of assets, I want a guy who's 24, 25, 26 that has a lot of runway in front of him over the next, as they build this roster over the next several seasons. The
Yeah.
Hunter Renfrow info that he brought out, and I wanted to touch on this, is I see it all over social media, like Josh McDaniels ruined Hunter Renfrow. They're not using Hunter Renfrow. This offense was so much better with Hunter Renfrow. This offense will be better when Trey Tucker plays in the slot, because they need that speed element to pull the safeties. And if they're going to drop safeties, you need to throw it over the top. Hunter Renfrow doesn't give you that.
Mhm.
And Hunter Renfrow, and we talked about this last year when we talked about Adams and Waller and Renfrow, the offense wasn't fit for all three of those guys. And there were times where we talked about probably two of the three. I don't know why they signed them long term, unless they just said, hey, let's run it back for a year with Derek Carr. But this offense can't get to where Raiders fans want it to get if you have Myers, Renfrow, Mayer, and Adams, because you don't have anyone on the field that threatens them deep.
Mhm.
And they're always gonna shade the coverage to Devontae. So as good of a downfield threat as he can be, no one's leaving him one-on-one to work downfield. So he's always gonna be working against two guys. So I think the future of this offense, you need Trey Tucker on the field more than you need Hunter Renfrow. And let's also be real. Hunter Renfrow put up a huge season. I believe it was 2020. I could be wrong. It could have been 2021, but that's when there was no one. Darren Waller was hurt. There was no other options. Derek Carr was
Yeah.
literally throwing to Hunter Renfrow every down. And then soon as Devontae Adams, and you saw, and obviously Hunter Renfrow was hurt last year, but you saw his role quickly diminish. And now when you brought in Jacoby Myers, there are no footballs to go around for all of the guys the Raiders have, especially if they start getting the ball to Michael Mayer like they did last week.
No, and they have to. Michael Mayer is one of their. Is Michael Mayer and possibly Tucker can be one of their few wins as a regime. So they're gonna let those dudes shine as much as possible. And both of those guys, I think the agility in the open field, along with the power and hands that Michael Mayer has, he put it on display this weekend. So you gotta give him an opportunity to get things going there. Devontae Adams was not pleased after the game. It does look like, to some fans, you could say it looks like the spoiled wide receiver. It could look like a lot of different things. Who knows what the deal is? But he wasn't happy. He wasn't pleased with maybe the performance, or maybe just the amount of targets, his involvement in the offense. It looks like. What are your thoughts about Devontae Adams here? As he usually he does not storm out of the locker room, not shower, and not talk to the media. He usually doesn't do that, but he did that on Sunday after the win.
I'm going to take the high road on that one. I think it was more, hopefully, that it's him, let the younger guys who are involved in the play talk to the media. Devontae stood up there and taken the heat earlier in this season when this team wasn't performing and they were losing games, and he was showing leadership there. So I think behind closed doors, everything's fine. I think it was more, he's battling through an injury. He's not really practicing during the week. He's giving this team everything he has right now. He didn't have a good game, not through any fault of his own. He wasn't targeted as much as he normally is. And I think Josh McDaniels needs to do a better job of calling plays where he's the primary receiver, and also getting him the ball, not trying to work him down the field as much, trying to get the ball in his hands before the double teams can arrive quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on the play caller. But then, it's also, these quarterbacks aren't used to playing with a guy like Devontae Adams. So you have Jimmy G coming in, you have Brian Hoyer coming off the bench. And they're just trying to go through their reads, and okay, we've got a double over here. The safety stated I got one-on-one on the backside. Jacoby Myers is turning out to be a really good number two. Michael Mayer got a little bit involved in this game, and they can still dump the ball to Josh Jacobs. So they need to find that happy medium where they get the ball more to Devontae, especially when they get to the red zone. He can't disappear in the red zone. You have to call plays for Devontae Adams. You have to throw the ball into the end zone.
Yeah.
It's hopefully something that happens more as the Raiders go on over the next month or two of the season. But I don't see anything here. You see all the rumors popping up on Twitter or X, and teams are salivating to get him. The Raiders aren't trading Devontae Adams this year. Their salary cap's going to prevent them from doing it, especially after they took the cap hit with the whole Chandler Jones fiasco. They can't trade Devontae Adams right now, and even Hunter Renfrow is going to be tough to move because of his contract. So I think fans of other teams are reading way too much into that. I don't think Devontae's going anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere either. I do think the injuries and the shoulder and everything like that are just all over him right now. So that could be part of the big reason why he's frustrated. But only he really knows what his frustration is right now. Myers and Mayer, good combination right there, right? As far as the passing game goes, I think I thought Jacoby. I got people who are Patriot fans in my family, so like but I felt like he was a good addition, especially knowing the offense. But I think he's a little quicker, a little bit more agile, a little bit more elusive than I thought. As far as like now we get to see him every single play, and this was a game where we finally saw, we all knew that that Michael Mayer was kind of that bulldog where he can just push, just run people over like a bulldozer. He also, made people miss, and we're using his feet and like in small areas, just making guys miss, making guys look foolish, trying to tackle him. He's a load, and I think that's something that the Raiders are kind of discovering slowly but surely. That Tucker a couple times a game going deep. You got Myers and you got Michael Mayer who can make plays as well.
Yeah, I know Mayer had a good game. He had 5 catches for 75 yards, I believe. The truth of the matter is like on 3 of those, he wasn't the primary read. It was kind of the quarterback getting through his reads. The first catch, he wasn't the primary read. He was on the backside, and they didn't cover him for the first couple of times they got the ball. One was on a scramble drill where he was lined up as the number 1 receiver all the way to the sideline, and kind of they got caught in the coverage where he had 2 vertical routes. The corner had to kind of play between them, and Jimmy had him stop on the sideline and hit him. The play in the red zone on 3rd and 7, we'll talk about a little bit later. It was more of just a side adjust hot read, but you did see them call a mesh play for him. I believe it was the second catch on 3rd down where he kind of Myers and him kind of crossed on shallow crosses, and he got the ball, and you saw him break some tackles and be able to be a bulldozer, as you said, in the open field. He's a tough guy to bring down. He's not going down with the first guy. And then as he got the ball, you saw his run blocking improve, and you saw him kind of pick up the rest of his game, and that's kind of what we've been waiting for. Now he needs to build on this. Now he needs another game with 4 or 5 targets, 3-4 catches, 50 yards, and then becoming a factor in the red zone is the next development. Like now he needs to be a factor inside the 10, inside the 15, and put points on the board.
Yep, we gotta do it. I mean, it just makes sense. I mean, the red zone is still something we gotta talk about because when we get to the con section of the show, Jacobs 25 carries, 77 yards. It seemed like when the game got on a little bit later, he got a little something going. I'm surprised when the quarterback change happened that he was able to get something going. But I think Judon not being there, being able to set the edge might have been part of that as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully buy into that notion that because they threw the ball deep one time that the running game got loose in the second half. I've seen that narrative, but it essentially came on one run, on an outside zone run where he got 18 of those yards. It was still 25 carries for 77 yards, 3 yards a carry, and 18 of those came on one. So it's not like he was ripping off 10, 12, 7, 8. Like that wasn't happening. The interesting thing was watching the All-22 is they basically went to a zone scheme this week. They ran a lot of power early in the season and quickly realized we don't have power with the 3 guys on the inside. They're not moving anybody. Then they went to a little bit of a zone. You saw some cracks. There was some holes where Jacobs probably could have cut back and got a few more yards. But this is a zone blocking line, which is interesting because last year they ran a lot more power and had success. But I think you're going to start to see more of these zone runs. And then hopefully what you see out this is some of those bootlegs, the action coming back the other way, and kind of tailor this a little bit more to what Jimmy ran in San Francisco if they can get that outside zone game going. And then the tight end becomes a factor.
And Jacobs likes what style better?
I think he's fine in both.
Either one?
I think zone is fine for him. I wouldn't say, outside zone as much as like mid zone or
Mid
inside zone he's probably
zone,
better
yeah.
at, but getting him outside to the tackles and working the edge of the defense. And you saw the Raiders do that a lot in this game against New England, is try to get the ball to the perimeter. He's not the fastest guy. Like he's not going to get to
No.
the perimeter quickly. So the blocks kind of have to set up. And then, I thought Thayer Munford playing majority game at right tackle. I was hoping for a little bit more in the run game than he showed on film.
As far as the defensive line goes, I mean, Butler got involved with a sack. We know about Crosby and what he's done. Is it hard to gauge because of the opponent, or just we got to sit there and say, because we got to sit there and say, hey, give them kudos, they played a good game, because I think it might have been like a year ago or like a couple of years ago when we were doing a show where they had like 3 or 4 games in a row where it was a new center and they made no progress as far as getting to the quarterback. But in this game, they were able to get to the quarterback a little bit and make Mac Jones feel uncomfortable.
I guess we'll find out over the next couple of weeks. So
Yeah.
they ran a lot of inside games this week, a lot of TT stunts where the tackles. So it was almost like if you're gonna just put 2 or 3 guys on Max, we're gonna run some stunts inside, try to pick some guys. And you saw them do it majority of the time with Butler and Tillery, and then a couple of times with Nichols, especially on the late sack. And then it was interesting. There were 2 snaps where Tyree Wilson was lined up, and an obvious passing down is a 3 technique defensive tackle, maybe trying to get him to loop around and get him loose. But if teams are going to start sliding protection to Max Crosby, and the other guys can't win one-on-one, now you need to do all these stunts in these games and try to get these guys looping around. And for this week, it worked pretty well. They got guys free in the middle of that defense, and they have a veteran center in New England. Andrews is a veteran guy.
Yeah.
They were without their left guard. Cole Strange didn't play, so they had a backup there. But I think we're going to see a lot more of that on obvious passing downs. Now, you don't want to do that on running downs on 1st and 10 and create huge holes in the middle of your defense. But if you get into 3rd and long, 2nd and long, now these guys can eat on the inside.
Yeah, Trevor Morik is getting getting the kudos. All Raider fans are posting his PFF numbers from games now. They're all on 25's on his dreads now. They're loving him now. But we've been kind of on it like every week. It's just been getting better and better. And he's getting more comfortable. Got an INT, one-handed INT because he still has that big cast on his hand, and it hasn't been doing a bad job as far as tackling goes. With that, but for the all 22, what are you seeing from Morag? I mean, he seems like he's in. I've seen the number flash on the screen much more every week.
I would say mark the tape, because go back to week 1, week 2, week 3 when everyone wanted him off this team and said he was terrible, and I was in his corner saying on film he's actually playing really well.
Yeah.
The scheme is tailored to what he wants to do, what he did at TCU. So they're playing a lot of cover 3 and cover 4, primarily the last several weeks. They're playing almost strictly zone, which is what he needs to do. And the interception was just an overthrow. He was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
But he caught the ball.
He caught it.
You saw him come up on a jet sweep at the goal line and make a stop the guy short. You saw him flash into the flat on a couple of those wide receiver screens and tackle guys for a 1 or 2 yard gain. So he's definitely tackling better. He's in the right place more often, and they're not asking him to do as much. He's basically playing cover 3 and cover 4.